All right, so we're recording. And my Connect just froze. Give me a second while I pull this back up.
Is the girl still in the bathroom?
Hmm?
Yeah, yes, yeah. Okay, you need to go get ready and get in the bath, okay?
The window.
Okay.
All right, so does everybody have the quiz pulled up?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
Is it the first one for number 1?
That's what I put.
That's what I put too.
Yeah.
All right. Is Connect running really slow for anybody else, or is it
Yeah,
just
it
me?
was for me earlier.
It's not for me right now.
Yeah, because it seems running normal here.
That's really weird.
Just be careful.
Yeah, because all the other websites are running perfectly fine for me, but Connect is running super slow. Let me try closing out of...
Where
okay,
you
there we
sending
go.
it back in?
You need to hurry because you got piano in the morning.
It pulled up. Let's try it one more time, and if it doesn't, I'm going to close out of Connect altogether and go back in and see if that fixes it. So, question 2.
I don't know if this is right, but I put the third one. I was kind of guessing.
First one.
I don't know.
I put the first one, but
No, that's fair.
let me see if I can... What did everybody else get for that one?
For 2 or 3?
2.
I got the first one for number 2.
And that's what I put. I'm trying to remember...
I guess, how does a decrease in government spending affect it? That's probably where I'm stuck. Because I understand an increase in taxes.
Yeah, so the decrease in government spending, that puts more money into the economy. So that's... I'm trying to remember specifically how it put it in the book. Let me go back.
Makes as soon as all the cups are, you need to go to take a bath, okay? You gotta be quick. You're being videotaped, okay?
Where...
Your chin on my face, still, man. Close.
Okay, so under government purchases and equilibrium, it says suppose the government decides to purchase 20 billion of goods and services regardless of the level of GDP and tax collections. Table 11.4 shows the impact of this purchase on equilibrium. Columns 1 through 4 carried over from Table 11.2 for the private closed economy. The only new item are exports and imports and government purchases. In addition to government purchases and government spending, plus investment plus exports yields a new higher level of aggregate expenditures. Without government purchases, the GDP was 470 billion. With government purchases, aggregate expenditures and real output are 550 billion. Increases in public spending, like increases in private spending, shift the aggregate expenditure schedule upward and produce a higher equilibrium GDP.
But isn't this saying a decrease?
Yeah, so a decrease in government spending would cause a downward shift in the aggregate expenditure schedule.
Okay.
Because this is saying increases in public spending shift the aggregate expenditure schedule upward and produce a higher equilibrium. So if you take away government spending, so that would basically be decreases in public spending, shift the aggregate expenditure schedule downward.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I think I was just overthinking it. Okay.
So I was going to say I knew I had read that somewhere, but I couldn't remember where it was. So, but it's always good to go over that stuff. So everybody's understanding it all. And this one I didn't know. I just guessed on this one.
What did you guess?
I guess number 2, marginal propensity to save is smaller, because isn't it if the marginal propensity to consume is higher, and that's not one of the options. So if the marginal propensity to...
the average propensity to consume is larger, is that the same thing as higher?
Average and marginal are different.
Oh. I misread that completely.
And I feel like they put that one in there to kind of trick us. But
the marginal and average are slightly different in the numbers you use.
yeah. So that's why I picked that one, but whether that's correct or not, I don't know.
Number 2?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go with that. That seems fine.
Yeah, I don't have an argument for what I put, so.
What did you put?
I put the third one. So we both did save, I just went the other direction.
I mean, that could be right, I don't know. I just went off of basically what I remember from the rest of it. That was one of those that I couldn't actually find when I went back in and looked.
So you're doing the second one on that one, or the third?
I did the second one, but...
On equilibrium.
If I don't know phone down get it.
And the reason I did that is a tax cut basically does the same thing as government spending, because government spending is offset by taxes. So if they're cut the taxes, that means they're putting more money back into the economy for people to use to spend. So if the marginal propensity to save is smaller, that means the marginal propensity to consume is higher, and that will have a greater effect on GDP.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I said, I didn't have an argument for what I put. I was just like, this one sounds good. Okay.
And this one's pretty easy. This one's because it says economy, open economy without a government. So that's like that second section in the book. So it's not the private closed. This is the public open, but it's just without the government. So that would be the consumption plus investment plus export, which would be the 300 billion.
Okay.
And this one I did find in the book, so I know that this one's correct. I did number 3, which is saving taxes and imports.
Yeah.
You could just Hey, Josh.
And this one I wasn't sure on either.
I'm gonna take this. I'll just type in it. You guys type in at the desk, by the way.
And I put number 1 because I felt like that made the most sense to me, but I could be wrong on that.
So that's the way I was leaning towards the first one.
Yeah, that one makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because the employment ones don't really, those aren't correct.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like it really has to do with capacity to produce. It's more about the spending. So that's why I went with number 1. But I don't really have any hard facts to back that one up. And this one it does have in the book. It's in that, on that very first section. Assumptions and simplifications. It says the most fundamental assumption behind the aggregate expenditure model is that prices in the economy are fixed.
The last one, an average price level in the economy is fixed.
Mine.
One set.
And then this one I also am not 100% sure, but I went, let's see, where did I pull this one from? This one I pulled from the book as well. And I got this from the section Equilibrium and Equilibrium GDP. And down, what's that? I thought it was here. Let me see if this is right.
Let's see.
It's not there. That wasn't it either. Let me see. In equilibrium. I think it was, oh, okay, changes in equilibrium. Yeah, it says in our examples, a 5 billion change in investment spending leads to 20 billion change in output, or output income. So a multiplier of 4, which when you do it, because it's multiplier equals 1 divided by the marginal propensity to save to get your multiplier. So when you do that, the multiplier will be 4.
So it'd be 20 billion?
So I put 20 billion because it would be the multiplier of 4 times the 5 billion would be 20 billion.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sorry if you hear my dogs growling in the background. They're fighting over a rope.
I just thought you were really hungry.
No, I just ate. It's my dogs. Hey.
You want to make this shitty?
Number 10.
Okay. From your hair. It's your hair.
Thanks.
And then this next one, 9, I really had to dig for the answer, but I did find it. So on under that section, consumption and investment schedules, right underneath the graph. Let's see. Or wait, was this the one that I found?
Oh, you missed a whole bunch. Come here and I'll brush it.
Schedule. Oh no, I was thinking the next one was where I found that there.
Come here. This one's not. It's not a second one, is it?
I put the third one. Amounts business firms collectively invest, and it says, oh yeah, it is there. The investment schedule relates to the amount of investments determined in A to the various levels determined of GDP.
Oh, okay.
So it's the collective amount that is intended to be invested.
Oh, okay.
Your offense, I was also looking at number 2, so you aren't alone.
You can't talk.
Yeah, at least I think that was it. Yeah, the investment schedule relates to the amount of investment to the various levels of GDP.
Oh, okay.
So that would be number 3.
I mean, you can't talk, okay.
And then this one, I just kind of went off of looking at the graphs on that same page, consumption and investment schedules. And I did that. The former, so it's talking about the investment demand curve, and that is an inverse relationship between investment and interest rates, while the later shows no correlation between investments and income. That's what I put, but I'm not 100% sure if
That's
that's
what I
right.
was looking at.
Because just looking at it, the investment demand curve, we know that one is an inverse relationship just because the way the graph is.
Right.
And that one is based off of the inverse relationship between investment and the interest rate. Right? Wasn't that it? Yeah. And so the inverse relationship between, it's not investment and income. So that was really the only one that I could see that fit that.
Yeah.
So whether that's right or not, I don't know, but that's the one I went with. And this one I just guessed on.
Number 11, I think, is the second one.
That's what I put. Investment schedule will shift downward.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was an educated guess, but it was still a guess.
That's the one that makes most sense to me.
And then this is where it gets confusing because it's remembering which ones applied to private, which ones applied to open, and which ones applied to like the full economy with public government and all that. But I put AE equals C plus IG equals GDP.
Is that the second one?
The first one.
The first one. Okay.
Yeah, because it's consumption plus investment, and that's in a closed because it's just consumption and investment. When you get to the open, it's consumption versus plus investment plus net exports. And then once you get to the government one, then it's consumption plus investment plus net exports plus the government spending. So it would be C plus IG plus XN plus G.
Right. Okay.
So that part is where it gets really confusing.
You just said a lot of letters. I think it has to do with that graph that we had earlier, right?
Yeah, and
Like
it's
a few persons
so,
ago.
and the easiest thing to remember is consumption is C, investment is I, exports are X, and then your government spending is G. So it's
Yeah.
XI, or it's CIXG.
Right.
And this one I put 2, and the reason I did that is when aggregate expenditures are greater than GDP. So if we go back to the book, and where was that one? I think that was equilibrium in GDP. No. Yeah, this is where it talks about it on equilibrium GDP, C plus IG equals GDP. So that's the page. And it's under disequilibrium. And that's where it talks about the reverse is true at all levels of GDP greater than 470 billion equilibrium level. Businesses will find that those outputs fail to generate the spending needed to clear the shelves and good being able to recover their costs. Businesses will cut back production. And so if you actually look at the table up above, because they were talking about like the real domestic output level of 510, if you look there, your savings is higher than your investment.
Yeah, I think it's that one too. Number 2.
Number 2? Okay.
And hopefully my explanations aren't confusing people. And I put recessionary expenditure gap for 14. And that one was from, let's see, what page was that on? That's from that last page, equilibrium versus full employment GDP.
Okay, that makes sense.
And it has a full section, recessionary expenditure gap, where it talks about full employment level and the difference between the two. Oh, wait. Yeah, the difference between the full employment and current employment or recession employment is the recessionary expenditure gap. And then what did everybody get for this one?
I know it's not the first one or the fourth one.
So would this be the inflationary?
What?
Would this one be the inflationary?
Yeah,
This one
that's
is,
what I was thinking.
yep, this one is an inflationary expenditure gap. And that's on that same page, that last equilibrium versus full employment. In fact, basically the rest of these questions are all from that page. So
Is this number 16 the fourth one?
this one's actually, oh wait, I actually clicked the wrong one.
Yeah, because the fourth one makes sense to me.
Because they're putting in money to try to get the government going, kind of. Okay.
Yeah, because I read the second one wrong. I was thinking it was the second because I thought it was saying close the recessionary expenditure gap, which is what they're trying to do. But they're trying to do it by pushing up the aggregate expenditure schedule.
Will help you. I'm in a class, honey.
And this one is actually from one of the earlier pages in the chapter, but I got number 2. Inventories will be 0.
That's what I was thinking.
Because all the others are correct.
I'm sorry, real quick. One of my little girls came in and was talking to me. So for 16, it was the close and inflationary.
No, it was the
No.
last one. Push the aggregate expenditure schedule upward.
Yeah,
Good thing you asked.
I had accidentally selected number 2 because I read it wrong. I read it that it was trying to close that recessionary gap, but it was inflation, not recession.
Okay, and then 17 is the second one. Inventories will be 0.
Yep.
Okay.
GDP.
Axel, stop it.
I have number 1.
Maybe the third one? I don't know.
That's the way I was leaning, was the third one.
If I had to lean toward 1, I would say that one.
Because I originally put number 1, but I don't know that that's correct either. Because that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with that schedule, but I don't know that that's right. GDP exceeds aggregate expenditures.
I don't know.
GDP exceeds aggregate So that goes back to, let me just look at something real quick. Okay, so it says, in a private closed economy, aggregate expenditures consist of consumption plus investment. Their sums show in column 6 makes up the aggregate expenditure schedule. So this goes back, this goes back to that disequilibrium. So it says, where is that? Yeah, so I would say it's number one, just based on that, because what you're looking at is if your real GDP is higher than what basically the equilibrium is, then your savings would be higher than your investment. And that's on equilibrium GDP, C plus IG equals GDP in the book.
So we're doing the first one, right?
That's what I would say.
Yeah, the first one would be.
And then these last two questions are out of that what is that called? The last word. So both of these last two questions are out of there. And so on that first one, it says these so-called classical economists acknowledge now and then abnormal circumstances such as wars, political upheavals, droughts, speculative crisis, and gold rushes will occur, deflecting the economy from full employment status. But when such deviations occurred, the economy would automatically adjust and soon return to full employment.
So it's the, wait a second.
So I put two.
Unemployment is temporary and it's soon eliminated?
Yeah. And then this last one, it talks about the Great Depression of 1930 called to question the theory that supply creates its own demand, known as Say's law. In the United States, real GDP declined by 27% and unemployment rate rocketed to nearly 25%. Other nations experienced similar impacts, and cyclical unemployment lingered for a decade. An obvious inconsistency existed between a theory that says unemployment is virtually impossible and that actual occurrence of a 10-year and that of the actual occurrence of a 10-year substantial unemployment. And then that's where it talks about John Maynard Keynes explained that cyclical unemployment could occur in a market system. So that's why I put unemployment, because that's what it just keeps talking about there is unemployment.
We got 100%. We're good.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yes.
All of our guesses were good.
A lot of them were educated, but still guesses.
Right.
So, alrighty.
Okay.
Okay. See you guys next week.
Alrighty, sounds good.
You guys have a good night.
You too.
Bye.